This week on the other side, the child psychiatrist sacked for standing up against radical gender ideology within our government health departments will join me. You're only allowed one perspective on care for children with gender dysphoria in Australia: immediate affirmation and drugs and surgery pretty much on demand. Are we witnessing institutional child abuse? We must have this important conversation. Also this week, global public opinion swings against Israel in the Gaza War. Australia's ridiculous policy on nuclear power shown up for what it is. And Topher Field will join me to discuss what's really behind the government's social media ban. All that and more this week, because it's time you got the other side of the story. G'day Perth, g'day Adelaide, g'day Australia. This is episode 420 of The Other Side for the week commencing Friday, August the 1st, 2025. I'm Damien Curry. The Other Side is your deep dive on the important issues that matter in Australia and that affect us from around the world from a different perspective. A new show drops every Friday night at 7 p.m. and clips from our Friday night shows drop throughout the following week, most nights at around 7, so you can watch any way you like. If you like what you see, please do support us. We're a voluntary viewer-supported show. There are now two ways to support us financially. One is to go onto our website at othersidetv.com.au and sign up to the exclusive side for less than $5 a month. Or you can now subscribe right on YouTube, if that's where you watch, by simply pressing the join button down below beside the subscribe button. It's that easy. The total stupidity of the people who govern us in Australia was made a little more obvious this week when the US President and the UK Prime Minister met in Scotland. They had a lot to say about Gaza and Israel, which we'll get to in a moment. But I'm going to show you 90 seconds of their joint news conference that focused on another issue that should make every one of us as Australians ask, what the hell are our stupid leadership doing when it comes to securing our nation's energy future? Securing our energy future means also securing our economic future. There is simply no separating the two. Securing our energy future also means securing our nation in terms of its military defence. Cheap, reliable energy is at the heart of every nation's survival. Australia is blessed with resources that other nations could only dream of. Electricity should be virtually free here if our leaders had a brain between them. But our ignorant and arrogant left-wing ruling class are playing games with our energy policy at our expense. I live in a fairly nice leafy suburb, dotted with houses of rich elites with Climate Action Now signs hanging off their letterboxes. They're multi-million-dollar homes. It's an orgy of virtue-signalling hypocrisy. But one house I saw this week really took the cake. This utter clown simultaneously had one sign in the front yard that said, Climate Action Now, and another that said, no nuclear for Australia. You might as well walk down the Burke Pit or Queen Street Mall with a T-shirt that reads, I'm a completely ignorant, selfish, woke idiot. I mean, honestly. Australia has the perfect geography and the mineral resources to be a nuclear superpower. We should have the cheapest energy bills in the world. But not only do these Green and Labor cretins want to shut off coal, they want to shut off gas, and they don't want any nuclear. Talk about the spoiled brat throw a tantrum approach. There are 439 nuclear reactors around the world. 32 countries use nuclear power. France has 57 reactors, the UK 15, China has 58 and is building 27 more. Germany stupidly shut all of its nuclear reactors down under the radical leadership of Angela Merkel. Then they suddenly realized, that makes them reliant on Russia for gas. And they're now buying in nuclear power from France and working out how to switch some of their old reactors back on. So here's what the leaders of our two closest allies spoke about this week when they met in Scotland. Have a listen to this and ask yourself, what the heck are we doing?
You know, there's a whole new thing happening with regard to energy from nuclear. Yeah. And the Prime Minister's looking at that very strongly. And I know you have Rolls-Royce nuclear plants. That sounds pretty good, right? I love that. What a great brand that is. But you're also doing the Rolls-Royce or the nuclear plants, the smaller plants. We're doing smaller and bigger, but the small is interesting. They do a small plant, very easy, very safe, And as they need more, they hook up another plant, and they have a series of plants instead of, doing the $20 billion plant. That gets tough for a lot of people to do. So we're just studying that. And it sounds like you're very far progressed, but that's a great thing you're doing on nuclear. We opened up nuclear about 2 months ago, and it's now safe and very inexpensive.
No, we see civil nuclear as a big part of the future as we go to sustainable, independent energy. And I think that between the two of us, we can work very much more closely
Yes.
on this. And we've agreed that that's our ambition, that's our aspiration. And this is going to be a big part of the future when it comes to energy. And you can see in the last few years, energy has been weaponized. Prices have dictated both families and businesses across the United Kingdom, and therefore taking control of energy is a huge prize. So the more we can work together on that, the better. And small modular reactors are a very big part of the future here, and we've got great companies like Rolls-Royce involved in that. So I'm very much looking forward to working together with you, Mr. President.
We'll do that.
So there you have it. Both sides of politics, the firm left in the UK Prime Minister and the firm right in the US President, our two biggest allies. And what does the political party that holds the balance of power in Australian politics, voted in by our genius miseducated youngsters, have to say about nuclear energy? Well, the Greens Australia have a no nuclear ever policy. One of the few Greens parties in the world to have a nuclear ban. But of course, we know that our Greens aren't really green. They're watermelon, green on the outside, red on the inside, and with a lot of pips. The Labor Party is just as bad. The Liberal Party made a campaign social media video before the last election, putting elbow alongside other left-wing world leaders on this issue. Take a look.
The biggest example of delulu is that nuclear energy has a role in the solution on climate change, in the Solulu.
Nuclear power, too, has a pivotal role in achieving global net zero emissions by 2050.
Nuclear power is the most expensive form of new energy.
Nuclear power is literally one of the most affordable. It's non-emitting, and it supports billions to our economy.
Nuclear power just doesn't stack up.
This is a real game changer when it comes to nuclear. It's part of a bigger story about clean power and making sure that we hit that clean power as we go forward. Nuclear is a part of that.
When it comes to nuclear energy, because the facts and the science tells us that it simply doesn't stack up.
The reality of facts and evidence tell us that you can't get to net zero 2050 without some nuclear.
So it's not elbow versus the right, it's elbow versus the global left. Amazing. If you like The Other Side, one of the best ways you can support us is by signing up for the products of our sponsors. And one of our best sponsors is PIA VPN, the virtual private network that stops people spying on your internet activity. It'll keep you and your family truly safe from the prying eyes of big governments and corporations without slowing down your internet speeds. And you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. You can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and you'll get the discount. And you'll get more info on those special deals if you check it out. That's piavpn.com/otherside. The world has been horrified by images of starving children coming out of Gaza lately. There's one picture of a child with his spine protruding and visible through the skin on his back that made the front page of the New York Times, the Sydney Morning Herald, and has been all over the ABC and other media. You'll know the image if you saw it. I'm not going to show it again here because we now know that it was of a child with cerebral palsy. The abuse of a disabled child for propaganda purposes by the vile creatures of Hamas isn't the least bit surprising. But world opinion has already been swinging against Israel. France, Britain, and Canada all say that they will be formally recognising the State of Palestine when the UN General Assembly meets again in September. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney joined Britain and France's decision later this week. It's about trying to salvage the two-state solution, he says. But he says it's dependent upon the Palestinian Authority reforming itself. Now, the Palestinian Authority governs the West Bank only. They lost control of the Gaza region to Hamas in 2007. The Canadian PM says he'll also be requiring commitment to an election in 2026, demilitarization, and the complete exclusion of Hamas.
An independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security.
On Wednesday, our time, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Britain would recognise Palestine if Israel didn't agree to a ceasefire. Now, Israel's condemned the move by all three countries as a reward for terrorism and a reward for Hamas. The Foreign Minister of Israel saying that it harms the efforts to achieve a ceasefire and a framework for the release of the hostages remaining. Prime Minister Albanese had 2 phone calls with Keir Starmer on this issue this week. The PM's office issued a statement saying Mr Albanese updated Sir Keir on Australia's aid contribution and the commitment to keep on increasing aid to Gazans. Meanwhile, Jim Chalmers told the ABC that it was a matter of when, not if, Australia recognises Palestinian statehood, although he would not say if that would be before the September UN General Assembly meeting or not. He also said recognition was conditional on the treatment and the release of the hostages, making sure also that there's absolutely no role for Hamas in any future government. US President Donald Trump agrees with Israel that this stance of the left-wing governments of the West will simply reward Hamas and sends a bad signal. But he's also said that he is deeply concerned about civilian casualties.
And we're prepared to help. We want to help. It's a terrible situation. The whole thing is terrible. It's been bad for many years, but it's great to hear you feel the same way that I do. We have to help on a humanitarian basis before we do anything. We have to get the kids fed. So we've been sending in a lot of food. A lot of the food that's been going there has been sent by the United States. I spoke yesterday with the president of the European Union, Ursula, who was terrific also on the subject, and she's going to play a big role also in helping us. So we have a good group of countries that are going to help with the humanitarian needs, which is food, sanitation, and some other things.
President Trump said it is very difficult to deal with Hamas, especially recently, because they don't want to give up the last 20 hostages they've held since October the 7th.
I'm speaking to Bibi Netanyahu, and we are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation. If they didn't have the hostages, things would go very quickly. But they do, and we know where they have them in some cases, and you don't want to go riding roughshod over that area because that means those hostages will be killed. Now, there are some people that would say, well, that's the price you pay, but we don't like to say that. We don't want to say that. And I don't think the people of Israel want to say that either, which is pretty amazing. A lot of people would say, just get it done and whatever it is. You could also say speed might be better for the hostages. You go through, with speed, you may have a better chance because they're in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble.
One independent media channel that I think's tried to maintain as fair a stance as possible for a long time on this very complicated issue is Piers Morgan's Uncensored channel. He's always had people on with very different views, and he tries to play devil's advocate and ask both sides challenging questions. He did so again this week, putting the spotlight on both the UN statement that Gaza faces a man-made humanitarian crisis and criticism of the UN from Israel and others. But Piers wasn't copping any of the claims that a humanitarian crisis isn't actually unfolding.
There is no starvation in Gaza, no policy of starvation in Gaza, and I assure you that we have a commitment to achieve our war goals. We'll continue to fight till we achieve the release of our hostages and the destruction of Hamas's military and governing capabilities. They shall be there no more.
No starvation in Gaza, Prime Minister. One word: bullshit.
Okay. Piers then interviewed the United Nations aid chief, Tom Fletcher.
It's a catastrophe. 1 in 3 people in Gaza hasn't eaten for days. We have teams on the ground, our humanitarians, who are also starving. And, tens of thousands dead over the last 2 years. But this desperate situation where 88% of Gaza is now under military displacement orders. So you've got all of the population who are left, the survivors, herded into 12% of the land.
UN aid chief Tom Fletcher there. He says things have improved a little bit in recent days. They are getting tens of trucks in, but they need to get 600 to 700 in. And they have a plan, he says, which has been outlined to the UN, and they could feed everyone if they could get in. The New York Times reported last week that Israeli military commanders themselves had said that there has not been any proof found of systemic theft of aid by Hamas, which was considered to be one of the problems, despite that being the official position of the Israeli government as to why aid isn't getting through. Tom Fletcher says there has definitely been some theft, but the vast majority of aid does get through. He says the obstruction is not Hamas now, but the Israeli government. Piers Morgan slammed the fact that foreign journalists can't get into Gaza to work out what really is happening because of Israeli restrictions. So the world has to rely on aid workers and doctors to get any news out.
You know, I saw an interview with one particular British doctor on Good Morning Britain, the show I used to do. It was a few days ago. And he was saying that he was seeing children coming in on a daily basis, but they would come in with a pattern of wounds. So one day there would be one pattern. Next day, another pattern, another body part. Next day, another body part. Pattern. In other words, a few children coming in with exactly the same wounds in the same part of their body, including at the end, a group of kids who had wounds to their testicles. And as he was outlining this, he had reached the conclusion that this was target practice involving children by the IDF. Now, that's one British doctor who, to my knowledge, has no reason to lie. He's not part of any propaganda machine. He probably has zero truck with Hamas like the rest of us. But he is seeing what he's seeing with his own eyes as an experienced doctor. And he is seeing evidence, it seems to me, of war crimes. Are you seeing and hearing and the same kind of thing?
Yes, we are seeing those. It's extraordinary that we can even be here talking about it. We are seeing those patterns of sniper wounds and targeting and targeting of kids and of the groins.
Tom Fletcher, what is your direct message to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said overnight there is no starvation in Gaza?
For Prime Minister Netanyahu, there is starvation. He'll be reading the reports of that from his officials, and we can help stop that. That starvation is doing immense damage to Israel's reputation. The world is demanding that it ends, and we can help solve that problem. We can stop that starvation. We know how to do this. Just let us do our work.
That's the United Nations aid chief, Tom Fletcher, speaking to Piers Morgan Uncensored. You can watch the full interview on that channel here on YouTube after this show, of course. Piers also interviewed Israeli Defense Force Major and former spokesman for the IDF, Doron Spielman. He directly attacked that UN aid chief, Tom Fletcher's credibility.
You know, I think it's tragic, Pierce. Watching your show, seeing you softball questions to Tom, who's a known virulent anti-Israel player. This is the same guy, maybe who was even on your show, that screamed to the world 14,000 babies are going to die in 48 hours, and then apologized and walked it back because of a lack of proof. This is the same guy that was UK ambassador, as you know, to Lebanon from 2011 to 2015, oversaw Hezbollah's growth in Lebanon as a terror organization, and then said he thought they should be a part of the government and they shouldn't be marginalized. This is a person who's overseeing this humanitarian agency and acts like all of a sudden they can't bring aid to people. You and I both seen the videos. There are thousands of tons of United Nations aid that are sitting directly at those crossings as we speak today. There are dozens of videos out there, and they are rotting for one reason. They refuse to accept that aid as long as Israel works through the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. They have refused. If they really care, if he cares about the tragic starvation in Gaza, he should be looking towards the air, the water, Israel, the United States, the UN. But he comes on here and he says, oh, we want everyone to work. They flat out publicly refused. The United Nations publicly refused last week to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, meaning they would rather have Gaza people die of horrible starvation than give up their political angles of trying to marginalize Israel and allow the food to actually reach those people.
I don't think actually that the Israeli government cares about the plight of Gazans at all. The reality is, so far, about 70% of Gaza has been completely destroyed. The remaining population have been herded around now into ever smaller pockets of what is remaining there. You've now killed 60,000 plus Palestinians. You've got 20,000 children who've been killed. You've now got starving and emaciated children, images being beamed to the world on an hourly basis, many of whom are now beginning to die literally of hunger. And this is started by a 3-month blockade, deliberate policy of a blockade, starving the innocent Gazans of food and water and aid and other things. And you put it all together, and you now have almost the entire world looking at Israel saying, what on earth are you doing?
Now, Piers continued for a good 3 minutes, raising the question about the doctor's account on UK TV about children being used as target practice by IDF snipers.
That children were coming in with patterns of clusters of sniper fire, as if they've been used as target practice. Right? So, yeah, you can come here and you can attack the United Nations. You can say they're the villains. You can blame Hamas for everything. And I say that as somebody who supported Israel for many months. As you know, to my personal cost, I was attacked virulently from the other side. But there comes a point when Israel's friends, those who've always supported Israel, have to stand up and say, enough of this carnage. It is getting you nowhere. You're not dismantling Hamas. You're not getting hostages freed. You've got starving kids now dying on a daily basis. Enough. So that's my response to you.
Pierce, I hear one lack of a word that comes out of your mouth with this entire statement, and I can agree with you that there's hunger in Gaza, which is Hamas.
Israeli Defense Force Major and former spokesman Doron Spielman there, he went on to say things that seem to make it clear that a two-state solution is no longer an option for Israel. That's the solution that both Australia's Labor and Liberal parties are supporting.
I'm not willing to go to sleep, and neither would you, Pierce, with Hamas remaining in Gaza. And you are correct. Israel could have ended this conflict by bombing this from the sky. We did not need to drop telegrams to everybody there. We didn't need to move the population. We lost 4 soldiers today. They never had to die. They didn't need to go into a tank. We could have taken care of everything from the air. The only reason we did not, and we know where hostages are, there's plenty of other areas where Hamas is hiding, is because we are trying in the most difficult situation, a situation that no one has ever fought in, to kill Hamas that is planned in advance to hide behind their own people, knowing they don't care about those lives, knowing that when they die, I will go on Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan will say Israel doesn't have a chance. You can't defeat Hamas. They've recruited 5 times the people. These are not true. Hamas is on its last legs. Its leadership has been completely destroyed. Israel, as you said, have taken over 77% of the territory and moved their civilian population, which is remarkable, to an area that's not perfect, but is mostly out of the way of the fighting. And you have humanitarian aid that Hamas steals from trucks. And when Israel tries to fix the situation, all of a sudden the UN says, no, we're willing to go in there, we're willing to work, but it's so disorganized. Where the hell were you for 21 months when Hamas stole the trucks? Pierce, it's the exact same discussion again and again. And once again, everything negative about Israel. We're the only democracy in this Israel. We're fighting for our lives against an enemy 2 miles away. And all you can do is bring Tom Fletcher, talk about everything that Israel's doing. Now you supported Israel for years, but when the going is getting tough, you'll look back in 20 years when the smoke clears, and you will see that you turned, unfortunately, you misunderstand Israel today. You misunderstand the will of our people, and you would never leave your own family on the border with Hamas on the other side.
I really recommend watching this episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored in full. I can't summarize the whole thing here and do it justice, but here's how it ended.
It doesn't seem to me the penny is dropping fast enough for people who are supportive of Israel that what is going on now is making Israel a global pariah. That is just a fact. It's not me saying it or spinning it or trying to conjure some kind of media narrative that isn't the reality. The world is turning against Israel in a very fast and profound manner from which it may never recover if it's not careful.
Pierce, you said something that I absolutely agree with. The penny has not dropped. The penny has not dropped around the world about what Israel's facing. And I'll tell you simply why. It hasn't reached their doorstep. When will the penny drop? And I hope it doesn't drop too late. When countries around the world wake up and they understand the radicalism and the cynicism that we're facing. They may understand that Hamas is brutal, but I don't think that they understand that Hamas is more brutal, and these aren't just words, to their own people. What does that mean? Yes, they will kill Israelis, they'll butcher them, they'll chop heads off, they'll do all these types of things. They willingly plan to have their own people annihilated to gain political advantage. It is something the world does not seem to understand. And the penny may drop, Pierce, only when it reaches their doorstep.
That's Israeli Defense Force Major and former spokesman Doron Spielman on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
You're watching The Other Side with Damien Coorey, Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month. This is The Other Side.
Folks, Australia is facing many political, economic and social crises at the moment, but having hosted this show now for almost 5 years, I'm convinced that one of the biggest moral and ethical issues we face is the way that we're handling kids who are presenting as gender dysphoric. Boys who think they are girls and girls who think they are boys, maybe just for a little while. It's true that a small percentage of children may suffer genuine gender dysphoria, but there are two things that are clearly not true. The first is that the right treatment path for these kids is most often surgical and drug intervention. The science simply is not there to back up that view. And the second thing that's not true is that every child who presents with gender dysphoria actually has it. There are many other things that could be going on. And we now have the issue, the added issue, if you like, of social contagion. It's become a little bit of a fad among kids to self-describe as non-binary these days. It's a little bit cooler than just being ordinary. People are afraid to speak out about this, as they're afraid to speak out about so many things that might offend the modern radical left, for fear of being labelled transphobic, sexist or racist these days, and even cancelled. But the promotion, and that's what the Australian approach of gender-affirming care is, it's a promotion of surgical and drug treatments for kids, is actually scientifically unproven to be beneficial. And one study suggests it's even potentially dangerous. So the promotion of this gender-affirming model of care used by the Australian health departments and governments, even over the wishes of parents in some cases, amounts to what many genuinely feel is a form of state-sanctioned child abuse. And that's something that we cannot stay silent on, no matter what the personal, political, or financial cost might be. What makes this all the more concerning is that the case that we're going to discuss today is not happening, as you might expect, under a left-wing Labor government. It's happening in the only Liberal National Party majority-run state in this country, Queensland. And it concerns the career persecution of not a minor figure, not a junior government medical staffer, but a highly skilled senior medical specialist. So this story has far, far more serious implications than just its own apparent surface injustice. This story speaks to deep systemic problems in our country in terms of the rights of parents, the rights of doctors, and the way that the health authorities and the main organisation responsible for licensing doctors in this country, AHPRA, has become politicised. This is the story of Dr. Jillian Spencer, a Queensland child psychiatrist who in April 2023 was suspended, then in June of the same year was informed by the Executive Director of Clinical Services at Children's Health, Dominic Tate, this man, that disciplinary proceedings against her had begun on the basis that she was guilty of misconduct. Why? Because she criticised the model of care at the Queensland Children's Hospital Gender Clinic. Dr. Spencer joins us now on the other side. Jillian, thank you very much for coming in and thank you for your time today. Let's get your story from the beginning. Let's start back in 2023. What was the essence of your complaint about the gender clinic at Queensland Health? What did you believe was wrong with the way that they were treating cases of kids presenting with gender dysphoria?
Yeah, well, my story actually starts in 2022 because for about a year before I was stood down, I was raising concerns in the hospital. what I was seeing was, well, all through my training and up until about 2017, 2018, I'd never seen any children presenting with gender distress. And then once the gender clinic was established, we just had this massive uptick. And obviously through COVID, that escalation was enormous. So I kept seeing all these adolescents presenting with gender distress, and they were the type of teenagers who we'd seen previously who would have self-harm, or they would have anorexia or other mental health conditions, but now they were all coming and claiming a trans identity. And those children were troubled, confused, traumatized, often had developmental conditions like autism. And in child psychiatry, we always do what's called a formulation, which is trying to understand why the young person's presenting in this way at this time. And we understand that with maturity, a lot of problems will ease. So all those principles of child psychiatry were just out the window when the kid went to the gender clinic, because the gender clinic would start from the premise that this child is trans or gender diverse and needs affirmation. So right from the start, they'd be affirmed in their claimed gender identity. All the issues would be put to the side because they believe in this model whereby if you affirm someone, any depression, anxiety, or other problems will fade away because of the affirmation. They believe in it so much.
I'm fascinated by this because the reason I'm fascinated by it is because I can't believe the level of stupidity of that. Like, how could it be that people who are educated in psychology, they're not psychiatrists, they're not doctors, medical doctors like you are, but they're psychologists, a lot of them. They've been trained, right? They know, I mean, there are psychiatrists, right, as well.
Yeah, they're psychiatrists.
But they know that you're supposed to, I mean, it's a fundamental science principle, right? You don't jump to one conclusion. You look and you keep an open mind until you're clear on what it is. And there are many conditions that it could be other than gender dysphoria. So they should know that there's this bias that's obviously going to be built in, right? They should have that professional capability. It amazes me that they can't see that themselves. Like, what level of intellect are these people at? What level of professional education are they at that they can't even get that basic principle of science?
Oh, well, people that believe in gender ideology come from all walks of life, but I think they're even more common amongst that professional class. And so, for example, the College of Psychiatry, Royal Australian New Zealand College of Psychiatrists, is completely captured by gender ideology. So it's rife throughout.
But it's the College of Psychiatrists. Like, these are the people you would think would know. Like, hang on a minute, we better not get caught into a one train of thought, right?
Well, the College of Physicians is captured too, and the College of General Practice. So it's
terrifying.
Incredible.
It's terrifying is what it is, right? That there could be that, like, a social contagion potential exists. And these people are the most educated people in our community. They're the ones that should be going, we better make sure we don't have a social contagion occurring.
We better make sure we're not
even capable
children.
of that intellect, that level of intellect. It just blows me away.
It's
Terrifies me.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So you're in this environment. You're a psychiatrist who's going, hang on a minute, science, guys, and also Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm.
Yes.
Right? There's a whole bunch of things we need to consider here. There's a million different interpretations or diagnoses that are potentially exist. You're the Dr. House in this environment, faced with a bunch of ideologues.
Yes.
And you're the one being ostracized.
Yes.
So how did you start to manifest your complaints? You were doing small things, or you were just rejecting. You weren't even doing anything. You were just rejecting the things that they were doing.
Sort of. I found working in the hospital really difficult. It got quite emotionally difficult because I really formed the view that we were harming children, and I couldn't believe it. I had previously thought we were all playing the same game, which was with every child that we see, we wanted to get the best outcome for them. And then it was like all of a sudden we were playing a different game, which was that we had to affirm, and this wasn't the best for the child, but we had to pretend it was. I couldn't believe it. And I was walking past the reception area with the massive transgender pride flags every day, and I was seeing everyone with pronouns in their email signature. We had an education session where I found out the hospital was running chest binder fitting sessions for girls. There was a whole lot of information coming through to me, which was just really making me very, very upset. And so I did try and do little things. So, for example, I changed my email signature to adult human female. I bought 50 of Abigail Schreier's book, which is on this topic, and I sent it out to all my colleagues with a little personal note saying, I'm really worried about this. Can you tell me if you're worried? If you're not, tell me, because I want to be less worried. I tried to really make it personal. And then I, took down the transgender pride flags after consultation with the managers in the area. So I did a lot of little things.
You didn't just take them down. It was my understanding was it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told the story that you actually, it was Pride Month. That was the excuse for them being up in the first place.
Oh, no.
And then you took them down at the end of Pride Month, or no? It was just
they'd been up for months and months,
Right.
probably more than 6 months or. Yes. And so I started talking to the managers in the area saying, look, I really think we need to have a neutral waiting room, and I'm happy for the transgender pride flag to be the same size as the Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flag, but I don't think that should be having these, massive outsized ones. And the managers said, well, they went up for a pride, a celebration, a long time ago. They never got taken down. They're not hospital property. They're supplied by Minus 18, which is a charity. So they thought that it would be okay for me to take them down, and I did, but then that got escalated to the hospital executive, and that's when the hospital executive were really upset and started clamping down on me.
So okay, so you're the problem.
Yeah.
You're the annoying one at work that's just not going along with the culture.
No.
Because the culture is inappropriately biased in one direction.
Yes.
We're not talking about a private clinic here. That's the other thing we need to point out as taxpayers. We are paying for this.
Yes.
And I don't like this being done in my name, frankly.
No.
And I'm pretty open-minded. I'm pretty much a liberal. I like people to have their own right to decide what their sexuality is and what their, even what their gender is if they're an adult.
Yes, adults fine.
But the problem is we're dealing with children here. And so it does become extremely questionable. Just for those of us who are not 100%, the pattern of care here, or the basis of care, the system is established and follows a UK system. Is that right? That was developed at the Tavistock Clinic in London. That clinic now shut down.
Yes.
Because of the Cass inquiry that happened last year that came out that said the science isn't there.
Yes.
And they had similar problems. They shut it down. Other clinics around the world have shut down as a result of that inquiry. We haven't.
Yes, and we keep being told this incorrect information by government ministers, not in our state but elsewhere, saying that our gender clinics are different to the Tavistock because our clinics provide holistic multidisciplinary care, which happens to be exactly what the politicians in the UK said about the Tavistock Clinic before the scandal got so big that they couldn't ignore it. So it's absolutely not true. What happened is the clinicians from the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne went to the Tavistock to get their model and bring it back, and then they seeded it in Melbourne and then around Australia. So our gender clinics are operating on exactly the same model, the affirmation model, and have exactly the same problems.
Now, this was all happening to you under a Queensland Labor government,
Yes.
Anastasia Palaszczuk.
Yes.
And the Health Minister of Queensland, Shannon Fentiman, who is still, I understand, the shadow health person, or she's still in the opposition front.
She's still in opposition. I don't pay attention to her.
Now we have a Liberal National Party government in Queensland. Queensland's the only state in Australia that has a majority Liberal government. So everything's better now.
Well, I must say they have done a wonderful thing in stopping new prescriptions of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to minors in public services in Queensland. That's exactly the right thing. We do have ongoing issues, and
I do believe in applauding politicians for doing the right
yes.
things. So that's good before we start to
get all sleep better at night, really, in Queensland.
But you still don't have a job.
Yeah, I'm still suspended 2 years and 3 months later. The other issue is that the gender clinic's still running and still affirming, but they're just sending kids out to private providers to get these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. And OzPath, the transgender organisation in Australia, has raised money to pay for puberty blockers because they're very expensive. They're about $12,000 a year. So the pathway is still there for children in Queensland.
Are all of the parents, are these parents who are aligned with their child's position and are happy to go along with this? Or we've seen situations where parental desire is being overridden. Is that happening?
I think now that the ban's in place in public services, it's not getting overridden in parents that are strong and able to put their foot down. But what happens with parents is that sometimes there's various factors that weaken them because they're scared of losing their kid.
Well, they're worried sick.
Yeah, they're scared of their child becoming estranged because children get fed this message on social media that if their parents don't affirm them, then their parents must be hate-filled bigots. And it's often vulnerable families that I think would affirm now because they don't feel able to stand up and say, no, you're the child, I'm the parent. This isn't happening. You have to wait till you're an adult and we'll work with you to figure out, why you're feeling this way and see if it can be improved. So sometimes separated parents are vulnerable because one parent will affirm and one parent won't, and then the other parent's on the outer and scared of.
Oh my God! Then the custody ties into family law. Oh my God!
And I just mentioned too that child safety kids are all under the policy of the Department of Child Safety, which is to affirm. So these kids that are the most traumatised, if they have gender distress, then all their carers will have to affirm them. So I find that absolutely disturbing that's going on.
And there's a whole bunch of obviously other conditions it could be. There are also situations where parents already don't have a lot of right to access to medical records of children and things like that, especially in mental health. So we've got some really serious issues. Okay. I'd like you to stay, if you don't mind,
thank you,
Jillian, and we'll come back in a moment and talk more to Dr. Jillian Spencer about this very, very important issue in a moment. Did you know that with a virtual private network or VPN on your computer, tablet or phone, you can log into your favorite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages? And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there, as a viewer of the other side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/otherside. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep the other side going and growing. If you thought we lived in a free country where doctors could have differing opinions about the right course of treatment and patients could decide upon who their doctor should be, think again. If you thought we lived in a society that upheld the basic medical principle of first do no harm, think again. If you thought we lived in a society where parents had the final say over what treatments their kids would undergo, think again. An organisation called AHPRA, the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, has control over whether doctors and nurses are allowed to work in Australia. And this organisation has been accused of being politically biased to the progressive left by a major medical association called the Australian Medical Professionals Society, or AMPS. Now, AMPS is an alternative to the main doctors' union, the Australian Medical Association, which has also been criticised for becoming too political and left-wing lately. My guest on the other side this week is a psychiatrist, medical doctor, a child psychiatrist who's been suspended from her job at Queensland Health, the state health department in the northern state, for 2 years and more now for speaking out in line with her conscience against automatic gender-affirming care. That's the practice of not challenging any child who presents with the condition known as gender dysphoria and simply affirming their belief that they're the wrong gender a little too quickly and before all other medical problems are ruled out. Dr. Jillian Spencer had also frequently criticised Queensland Children's Hospital Gender Clinic for displaying LGBTIQ+ flags and rainbow signage, telling her bosses that she was seriously concerned about transgender activism at the clinic that could have seriously impacted care by leading to vulnerable children being encouraged and even praised for being transgender. And Jillian joins us now. Jillian, thanks very much for taking the time to join us again on the other side. And I just wanted to start by saying, we don't have this. The science doesn't exist totally, right? There is a very small percentage of people who are genuinely transgender, possibly, but there's also a lot of people kids grow out of it and become. Oftentimes they're just gay kids.
Yes.
And they go on and lead a very normal life.
Yes.
But if these interventions come in too young, why do we do these interventions at all at a young age? What is the case for it?
It was originally thought that because what they noticed was that adult people who had transitioned as adults were doing very poorly in a number of ways in terms of their mental health, suicide rate, being victims of crime, perpetrating crime, drug use, all sorts of negative indicators for adult people who transitioned as adults. And so the Dutch came up with the idea that maybe they would have better outcomes if they were able to pass as the opposite sex. And particularly for males, it is puberty that changes their body so markedly so that it's harder for them to pass. So then they came up with the idea of blocking puberty, and they had a very dodgy study looking at that and claimed good outcomes, which were unreliable, but nonetheless, it got rolled out around the world based on this very dodgy study without any real outcomes showing any benefit. And there's been, because there's internationally, all the gender clinics are run by activists. And so they pump out all this dodgy research with methodological problems, which make the study completely unreliable, claiming that these interventions show benefit. And that's why you're getting these systematic reviews where there's people that really look, does this study tell us what it's trying to tell us that it tells us? And they say no, because it's got so many flaws.
Now, we've seen a lot of stuff in psychology and the social sciences where false studies have been pushed for ideological reasons. We know that. We know that the left have captured academia on that level.
Yes.
I didn't think the left had captured science.
Oh,
How did we get to a point where medical science is now being influenced ideologically?
Well, I see it as a political movement that's taken over psychiatry, and it's masquerading as a health treatment. I think the reason why it's had to be like that is because naturally people remember adolescence and think, oh, I did some crazy things back then. That's what adolescence is like. But there's had to be a way for the public to disregard their own experience. And the way to do that is, I think, with the enigma of psychiatry, so that people think it's something different and special that they know nothing about, so they can't comment on transitioning children because those kids must be very different. They need it. They'll jump. Yeah. So I feel like it's not actually a medical treatment. It's a political movement. The flags in the workplace, the language, the enforcement of it by public services, it just doesn't make sense as a health treatment. It only makes sense to me as a political movement.
The Tavistock Clinic in the UK is where this gender affirming care was most, or sort of the guidelines for it was started.
Yeah.
The person who started the gender affirming creates the gender affirming care model for Australia was recently given a scolding by a judge. So there was a family court. Justice Andrew Strum criticised the whole model, and he was criticising Professor Michelle Telfer, right? She's the woman considered to be Australia's foremost gender medicine expert. And Justice Strum said that Telfer gave misleading evidence in support of a mother who wanted her child to be prescribed puberty blockers. And News.com reports that Justice Strum stripped the mother of custody and effectively blocked the 12-year-old from accessing treatment. Also questioned the guidelines for not recognising that children might not be capable of making life-altering medical decisions about their gender identity. Shock.
Yes.
And Justice Strum also criticised the political advocacy of gender clinic doctors and said the standards of care and rules were written by transgender activists. And he believed parents had been coerced into giving assent to puberty blockers. That is a massive ruling, right?
Yes.
That's a big deal. This coercion happens. What's the expression they use when they say, better to have a child that's alive or not?
Do you want a live daughter or a dead son?
Do you want a live daughter or a dead son? I can't think of a more emotionally manipulative and frankly sick thing to say to a parent of a mentally ill child who's presenting as gender dysphoric. Ought there not be, first of all, a clear, unbiased assessment? A child presents and says, I think I'm the opposite sex, okay? The child could be gay. The child could be suffering any number of other mental health issues, right? And you're saying this is not even being looked at in a lot of these gender clinics around Australia.
Well, according to the model, you're not allowed to. It is transphobic. The premise of the affirmation model is that the child before you is naturally trans or gender diverse. You start from that premise. So that's why I ran into
fundamentally unscientific.
Yes, it is. It's a political movement. It's not, it's crazy.
I just find this astounding. Okay. All right. So that's the starting point. And this is happening in Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, Western Australia, everywhere.
Yes.
And okay, we've got Labor governments all over the place. We've got a Liberal Party government in Queensland. The Sunshine State is the only majority Conservative state in Australia. And it's still going on there.
Well, they have changed it in the gender clinic so that they can't prescribe the puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, but the affirmation model hasn't been discarded. But I'm hoping, I don't know what will happen, but there is this Ruth Fine independent review into stage 1 and stage 2 hormones in public services that is due to be released in November, the report. And so that will guide how public services go. We do need Queensland to lead the way. We need Queensland to be far more assertive in getting rid of the gender clinic and somehow finding a way to stop practitioners in private prescribing these hormones to children as well. So we need more from the government, but they have done quite well.
Now, you've been persecuted by Queensland Health, as we
Yes.
spoke about in the last segment. So two and a half years now almost, you haven't been able to practice. I would have thought that with the shortage of child psychiatrists in this country, that, we need to be looking after people like you, not the opposite. But let's just, your story didn't stop with just persecution from the government and the failure of the Liberal National Party in Queensland to now do anything about reinstating you, by the way, which I think they probably need to gut the culture of the whole organisation
Yes.
before you're even going to be able to work in it.
Yes, I agree.
But they need to get their finger out, and that's Tim Nicholls is the health minister in Queensland. I just want to show the sort of political pressure that's on the government as well from the gender activists, because I saw this sign in a cafe yesterday in Brisbane. And this is from the gender activists, and it says, "Hey, Tim Nicholls, reinstate trans youth healthcare now." So there's a very strong push on the other side,
Yes.
but that's not good enough. Tim Nicholls, you are a conservative, you are a liberal. You need to, therefore, be putting the opposite point of view on this and stand up against this craziness. So we need to have that, but you're also being attacked by AHPRA. I want to talk about AHPRA for a minute.
Yes.
What is AHPRA? It regulates doctors and nurses, right? It's a federal body. I mean, it's
It
weird.
is. It's a federal body that seems to be it doesn't seem to be accountable to any office of government. And so what we do is every health professional, so not just doctors, but nurses and occupational therapists, etc., we all have to register with AHPRA and pay our money each year, have our AHPRA number so that we can prove that we're registered. And it's a way of making sure that doctors and other health professionals are safe and can keep practicing. And there are issues with that are legitimate and need to, of course, we don't want doctors having sex with patients, etc. That needs to be somewhere that looks at that, where it's reported to and investigates. But unfortunately, the attitude of AHPRA is to really censor doctors so that they can't express any dissent to dominant narratives.
which they did during COVID.
Yes.
Right, which is part of the reason why AMPS was formed, the Australian Medical Professionals Practitioner Society, which is the union to counter the Australian Medical Association.
Yes.
So I hope more doctors are supporting AMPS.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's quite strange, right? I mean, this whole ideology seems to have permeated all of these organisations that we once, when I was growing up in Australia, we took it for granted that the AMA was very neutral and professional, and I went away from Australia and came back 20 years later, and I've noticed that the AMA is very politically one-sided.
Exactly. Yeah. What they tend to do is create small subgroup steering groups, which then attract all the gender activists. And then these organisations refer to them as experts and get those small subgroups within their organisations to generate the policy for the whole organisation and say, well, it was created by experts. So, so these really extreme small groups have a lot of outsized influence on these bigger organisations.
Jillian, your case now, your situation, you're taking action. You've actually taken the bull by the horns, and congratulations for doing that.
Thank you.
Become proactive rather than being a victim.
Yes.
You're going to go for it,
Yes.
and good on you. So you are now taking action in a number of different commissions and human rights
Yes, I am.
things like that.
Yes.
Good on you. How can people support you or find out more?
Oh, yes. Well, I've got different actions going on, but I've got a Human Rights Commission complaint, which is now in the Queensland Industrial Relations Commission, and that's where I'm trying to get it so that people can have gender critical beliefs or a belief in biological reality that people can't change sex in their workplace and they can't get disciplined or fired for believing that. And also that same case is about doctors being able to have their own conscience about what sort of healthcare they provide. They can't be mandated by the state to provide a particular healthcare. So if I am successful with that case, it would be wonderful. And I'm supported in that case by the Human Rights Law Alliance. So if people want to assist, then donating to them, there's
HRLA.
Yes.
Yep, very good.
So
they
that
can
would be
find them on
wonderful.
Google. Great. Okay, it's good to see that they're supporting you.
Yeah.
You also got AMPS supporting you and
Yes,
the
I
Red
do.
Union organisation. So there is some hope.
Yes, I think so.
Get
Yeah.
some sanity in. You must be feeling a bit better. How are you going, and what are you up to? And are you?
No, I'm doing quite well. I found last year quite hard because before the CAS review came out, I knew the final report. I was waiting for it, and I thought it was going to solve all my problems. So
The UK review into the
yes,
Tavistock Clinic.
exactly.
Yeah, started,
which was released in April, and so I was building up to it, and then it came out, and then the mainstream media reported that it wasn't applicable to Australia, and it dawned on me that nothing was going to change, and I was really upset for quite a few months. But I've managed to get through that, and yes, I'm really feeling much better, and I'm looking forward to my case against Queensland Health to see if I can make a change and hopefully help everyone in their workplace.
Well, we'd love to have you back on the show sometime. Tell us how it's going. Give us an update.
But
thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, Dr. Jillian Spencer, joining us there on The Other Side. We'll be back in a moment.
The Other Side with Damien Coorey is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed and diving deep on the issues that matter most in around an hour. So you don't miss a thing. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel at Other Side Oz by clicking the button and the bell below the picture frame. And follow us on X now at Other Side Oz. That's AUS at Other Side Oz. It's free. This is The Other Side.
So our nanny state government will press ahead with widening its planned social media ban on kids under 16. And while I've got no problem whatsoever with kids having their social media use limited a bit, I think it has to be left in the hands of parents and schools at the request of parents to manage, not government. You can't stop kids going online completely, but just by having parents do the job of parenting at home and schools being empowered to ban devices during school hours, a lot of the damage could actually be fixed without Big Brother needing to intrude even more into our private lives and freedoms. But this is Australia 2025, so of course that won't be happening. What will be happening is what always happens. The government will use this issue to take even more of our liberty away in the interests of keeping us safe from life and its endless harms. And they'll tax us for the service, of course. Anyway, our overlords have decided this week that anyone under 16 will be barred from creating an account on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and others, including YouTube. YouTube is run by Google, and originally it was going to be exempt because of how many kids use YouTube for their homework and for educational purposes. Basic principles of civil liberties aside, a ban like this is a bit like Malcolm Fraser or Gough Whitlam waking up in the 70s and deciding to ban television. This is how dumb and intrusive our politicians and governments have actually become. Why? Because we let them. Social media is a bit toxic and full of garbage, and the algorithms are designed to just feed people more of the stuff that they've already been watching. That's true, and this is why everyone thinks most people agree with them most of the time. I actually am someone who believes in an ultimate truth and reality, and that will hopefully win out in the end, hence this show. But kids don't have the ability to discern so well, so I'm all for some restrictions being imposed by parents and schools, just not the government. The other issue is cyberbullying and damage to the ability to socialise properly, to have a real-life conversation with real-life humans and interact with good manners, a bit of respect, and to pay attention carefully and listen to one another mindfully. And then to round it all off, there's the question of the correlation between screen time and major depressive disorder, which is off the charts high. And it has to do with the neuroscience of dopamine regulation, among other things that I don't fully understand. So yeah, we do need to get our kids off screens big time. Kids use YouTube for study, and it is full of exceptionally good content on history, politics, science, maths, everything. Kids will be able to watch YouTube. You don't need to create an account to watch. And parents will still need to supervise them. The government won't be raising our kids for us, thank God. But Google, the parent company of YouTube, is very angry about all of this. It's threatened legal action. Joining me now to discuss it all is fellow Aussie independent news commentator and documentary filmmaker Topher Field from the Oddcast podcast. Topher, welcome.
Damien, thank you so much for having me on. And this is a blow directly to the heart of what you and I do.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to talk to you, because I smell a rat, because this isn't going to stop kids watching YouTube, right? They're still going to be able to get on and watch it. So what the hell is it all about?
One of the things we all need to keep in mind all the time when we're looking at politics is that policies are not usually designed to succeed. They're usually designed to give a pretext for them to have to do more later on. I write about this extensively in my books and other places. The reality is that politicians and bureaucrats, they can build entire careers out of chasing impossible goals. The more impossible the goal, then clearly the more budget they need, the more employees they need, the more people they need inside their bureaucracy. Therefore, the higher the pay bracket they go up into, and so on. And this snowballs. The incentives in politics are really, really perverse. The incentive is to make a promise and then not be able to keep it, blame somebody else for not being able to keep that promise, and use that as a premise to need more power, more money, and more resources to be able to do more towards achieving this impossible goal. Keeping children safe is such an emotive topic, and it's a very, very popular one amongst politicians to use as this impossible goal. We need to keep children safe online. Well, true, fair enough, yes. And we have resources for parents to be able to do that. There are parental controls for exactly that reason. Every internet service provider in Australia has the ability, or any client has the ability, to go to their ISP and say, hey, would you please turn on safe search functions onto my internet connection? And that will deal with a lot of the problems to begin with. A lot of places now allow their own filtering. So you can go onto Google itself and have safe search turned on. And there are parental control ways to make sure that that stays turned on. Yeah. There are a lot of options for parents. Yeah. What this is about is essentially the government saying, parents, we have deemed you to not be competent. We have decided in our own infinite wisdom that you are not actually capable and qualified to be a parent. And so we as the government are now going to step in to fill the void. This is nothing less than a shift of ownership, where children no longer own themselves and belong to their families, but they're actually owned by the government and belong to the government.
Yeah. And look, I mean, you can see the manipulation in this, because you look at the way that they did the PR launch the other day with Annika Wells, the communications minister, and Albo coming out with the three parents of the, and you and I are both parents, so we understand the intensity and the tragedy of a child with if a child had mental illness, or if a child actually took their own life, was bullied, whatever. But, you start with this premise that nobody can disagree with, right? Which is that we have to protect children online. And then you use that as the premise to introduce more controls and more laws. My concern is that, what are they up to behind the scenes? To me, it's always like they're seeking more censorship, more control. And this might be a backdoor entry into that, that if everybody is required to identify their age, because it's not just going to be the kids that are going to have to show that they're over, it's everybody's going to have to show their age. There's going to be age verification, face recognition age verification, right, for everybody, which means online anonymity. Not that you and I benefit from any online anonymity, but a lot of other people who have to support themselves and are working in jobs where they can't speak out like you and I do. Or aren't prepared to pay the cost of that, of what we do. They have to have that anonymity to speak out, and that's going to be gone now.
So let me be the bad guy and say, of parents who've endured their children going through mental illness or other things, bullying, or even taking their own lives as a result of online interactions, obviously that's tragic, but the responsibility for that lies on the parents. And I'm not going to absolve them of that just because they're the ones bearing the weight of it, and they're obviously grieving the loss of their child. I'm not going to turn around and lie to myself or to my culture and say that that is anyone's fault other than the parents. That is our job as parents, is to protect our children from predators. The internet certainly opens up new avenues for predators, and it is our job to be vigilant to that. It's not that I have no sympathy for them, but I certainly don't think that we should be writing policy for the whole of Australia on the basis of a handful of parents who, quite frankly and bluntly, did not do their job properly. In terms of whether this will affect all of us, it's designed to affect all of us. This is a backdoor. It's not whether this might be used in that capacity. It is a backdoor for universal censorship. And for anyone that misunderstands, this isn't a one-time verification. Once you've verified that you're over 16, then your account will be fine. I promise you that the government has every intention of ensuring that there must be repeated checks along the way. And this is where the facial recognition comes in. Because what will happen is, of course, Children that need to do schoolwork or homework will then say, hey, dad, hey, mum, can I just use your account because I'm not allowed to have my own anymore? And the parents will say, sure, honey, because they're busy making dinner or earning money or dealing with other realities of life. And so therefore the government's going to turn around and say, hey, children are accessing this content anyway because they're using other people's accounts.
Of course,
what we need to do is to develop a system whereby the camera on your device will turn on periodically and check that your face is the one that matches the government issued ID that you're going to have to use in order to get your age verified in the first place.
Oh God! Okay.
What's going to happen now is this is now 1984. You remember, if you've read the book, you remember the screens that were on the walls, and they were always watching you. They were shoving propaganda down your throat, but they had cameras and they were always watching you. We are literally entering a 1984 universal permanent surveillance state under the guise of keeping the children safe from harms online.
Well, look at the way that this has been presented. I mean, they keep going on about how world first. This is Australia's world first. Okay, well, we're the test market, obviously, in the world to see how far they can push this. And Julie Inman-Grant, who is the head of the E-Safety Commission, the Australian E-Safety Commissioner, Dr. Inman-Grant, she said that, when talking about whether they were supposed to whether they were going to give an exemption to YouTube and Google, she said when we asked where they were experiencing harm and the kinds of harm that they were experiencing, the most prevalent place where young Australians experienced harm was on YouTube, almost 37%. Now, my problem with this is that she then went on to say this ranges from, look what she put first, misogynistic content to hateful material. And then she says to violent fighting videos, online challenges, disordered eating, and suicidal ideation. Well, I would have put those around the other way in terms of priority. Yes. And it says it says a lot, right? Because the first thing is misogynistic content and hateful material. Oh, hello, identity politics woke person who wants to drive a certain political agenda. That's your priority, is it? Who's going to determine what it is? What's misogynistic?
I was going to draw your attention to exactly that same reality. Now, I want to go back to something that you said, and I actually want to give credit to Senator Fatima Payman, who stood up in the Senate when Senator Ralph Babet did an emergency motion on Tuesday. And Senator Payman actually said point blank, why are we so proud of being the first of these world-leading policies? Why do we assume that that's a good thing? It's because the rest of the world doesn't want these ideas. They recognize that they're not good ideas. So credit to her, broken clock and all of that. But she's right on that point. Now, in terms of yes, the kinds of harms, this is the trick. This is the lie. They bring out somebody, a parent whose child has suffered the most extreme levels of harm, but then they regulate for things that are arguably not harmful at all. You could consider, if you were of a mind to do so, you could classify Jordan Peterson's videos as misogynistic content.
Of course.
And on the one hand, they've actually helped millions upon millions of young men to find their feet and find out of themselves and do something good. But if you're cynically inclined to do so, you could turn around and say, right, every single person who's ever watched a Jordan Peterson video online or Prager University or any one of these sorts of places where you simply have mature masculine role models talking about what it means to be a man, if you were Julie Inman-Grant, you could very easily classify that as hateful, misogynistic content and therefore get whatever numbers you want.
Well, I'm no fan of Andrew Tate. I can't stand him. I think he's a macho idiot, and I don't mind saying that out loud, who's done more harm than good for men's rights than anybody. He's a cretin, but I still would let his content go forward. And you think Julie Inman-Grant's going to allow Andrew Tate's content to go forward if that's her criteria for what she considers to be hateful or misogynistic? Of course not. So again, it's censorship.
Well, at this point, they're not talking about censoring adults. And so what's happened is anyone upon whom this ban actually applies, as soon as they turn 16, they're going to go looking for this stuff because guess what? Their older siblings, the older people in school are going to be on their devices and showing them all manner of different things. And it's going to be a little bit like the effect of smoking, the appeal of smoking for young people. Now, that has fallen away for cultural reasons now, thankfully. But what Julie Inman-Grant has created here is this incredible magnet towards these things because they are barred. They're out of reach of these 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and the 16, 17-year-old siblings and friends and people in their wider social groups are going to be giving them access to it and glimpses of it. The first thing they're going to do when they turn 16, assuming that these bans even work, which they won't, by the way, that's a whole other story, but assuming that these bans even worked, they would be desperately looking for the most extreme and frankly unacceptable, in my opinion, not that I want it to be banned, but the kind of content that Andrew Tate puts out is not something that young men should be being led towards. They should be being shown shown it for the purposes of saying, don't be this guy. This guy is an empty, hollow, egotistical shell who is chasing one dopamine high after another. Don't be like him. That's the only purpose that Andrew Tate serves in the world, is as a cautionary tale. But the fact that we're making his content and other content like that somewhat attractive because it's somewhat forbidden for these young men growing up, it's going to have the reverse effect of what they say they want.
Well, YouTube are fighting back, mate. Rachel Lord from YouTube Australia says that the eSafety Commissioner's advice for younger people to use YouTube in a logged-out state deprives them of age-appropriate experiences and the additional safety guardrails that we specifically designed for younger people using YouTube. So, the very fact that they're going to be logged out using YouTube means that they're not going to be logged in, and they're not going to have the YouTube, systems in place to protect them. So it's just barking mad, bonkers, badly designed policy, dressed up to look like they care and they're looking after us and taking. And once again, same old left-wing nonsense. And of course, we got to say it, sadly, a weak as you-know-what opposition.
Absolutely. And this is the classic bureaucrats' idea that unless the government does it, it won't be done right. If you want it done right, the government needs to do it, which is, of course, not how reality works at all. And Julian Mangrant is creating new obstacles for YouTube, who do take their responsibility quite seriously. Believe it or not, if you understood the volume of content that gets uploaded on there every day, you realize that actually they do a tremendous amount towards protecting people from content that is just nothing but harmful and tailoring age-appropriate experiences for accounts where the age of the account holder is registered with them. They already do quite a lot. I certainly say bring on the lawsuits if they do actually follow through. One last thing, there seems to be a lack of awareness that these rules are actually going to apply to search engines as well. This is Google, this is Bing, this is Google Maps. You won't be able to, you will have to have age and ID verification in order to log into your Google account. And now I use Google as the hub of my own business, email and everything else. And unfortunately, that means I'm either going to have to migrate the entire business to a new provider, or I'm going to be subjected to this age verification. Now, in my case, I actually don't particularly care because, like you said before, I'm already public. I don't say anything in secret. I'm quite happy to be out and proud about what I believe about the world. But that's a little bit like someone saying, well, I'm not afraid of censorship because I say what I want. Well, yeah, okay, but they're still going to come and punish you for it sooner or later.
Mate, you had the Victoria Police knocking on your door during COVID, I remember.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
You got taken to the police station. If that happened to me, I'm not sure I'd be still here.
Yeah.
So good on you.
For those that don't know, I was arrested for Facebook posts that I made during the lockdowns down in Melbourne. I'm very proud of them. You can go to battlegroundmelbourne.com and watch the documentary for free. Battlegroundmelbourne.com. It's completely free. You can watch all of that.
Well worth watching, by the way.
Someone with skin in the game,
yep.
and I have a personal, very strong view on this. I'm still dealing and working through the emotional and psychological impact of what we were put through down in Victoria, particularly as I was targeted by police and all the rest of it. So I have skin in this game, but I believe firmly in, number one, free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. People should be allowed to say harmful things, and then we should be allowed to point at them and laugh. But secondly, that the government is not the right vehicle, is not the right mechanism to get involved in deciding what people can and cannot see at whatever age. That is for parents to decide.
Good on you, Topher. GoodPeopleBreakBadLaws.com is Topher's website if you want to get onto that. Good People Break, it's on the screen there, but GoodPeopleBreakBadLaws.com. And also just, Google, while you can, Topher Field on YouTube, and you'll see Topher's channel there as well. Mate, thanks very much. Hope to have you back on the show very, very soon. We're going to talk about housing next. You've got some interesting takes on housing, so I'm looking for an immigration where we might disagree.
Might have a few people clutching their pearls.
Yeah, can't wait for that one in the weeks ahead. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Damien.
And that is all for this episode of The Other Side, your analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke. We'll see you next Friday night, and clips from the show will be dropping throughout the week as usual on our YouTube and Rumble channels. If you like what you see, please do support us. We are a voluntary viewer-supported show. There are now two ways, actually, that you can support us financially. One is to go to our website at othersidetv.com.au and sign up to the exclusive side for less than $5 a month. Or you can now subscribe right on YouTube, if that's where you watch, by simply pressing the join button, which is beside the subscribe button down below. It's that easy. The QR code at the bottom of the screen will also take you to our website to sign up if you want to do it that way. And then YouTube doesn't take a cut, but it's totally your call. I'm Damien Curry. We'll catch you next week. Bye for now.
The Other Side with Damien Coorey is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month.